Hi, so in this video we're going to talk about Linux, the operating system, and more over that we're going to talk about what is Linux, some basic commands to get you started, and also the very famous, or should I say infamous, folder structure. So let's just get right started with what is Linux basically, and how can we understand what Linux is? Well, first of all, I'm in a Linux version right now. As you can see, it looks like, Windows in a way, but the button is different. The start button, whatever we're going to call that. And things look like something you probably could use here now. You can press some buttons and you got some folders and stuff. What I really want to talk about is that Linux is not Windows. So when you're going to try Linux for the first time, you probably have a lot of questions. I'm going to try and answer all those in this video. The first question might be, can I run the same software on Linux that I can on Windows? The short answer is probably, but the longer answer is no. The probably answer is dependent on that you know about virtualization and you know how to run different kind of virtualization software that emulate Windows in a way so that you can run your specified software. Some software wrote for Linux is also written for Windows, and then of course it's easy for you just to say, I'm going to use the Linux version. Some software parts is also written for Mac computers. Now, even though that Mac computers underlying the operating system is based upon Linux, well, it's not really the same as the kind of Linux you're going to use. So what do I really mean by that? I know it's complicated, but there are many different kind of distribution of Linux. You got stuff like Debian, which is a very standard version to use, Linux Debian. You can also use Linux Ubuntu, which is the most commonly used widespread operating system in the world, as far as I know still is. I'm using a different distribution called Linux Kali, or Kali, how we're going to express that. And there are so many different kinds of Linux. If you're already in the tech area and you are well rounded in Windows, you might heard about Alpine, Linux Alpine, which is a lightweight version of Linux that you can install on small devices. You can have it on small board. You can customize it like you would like. So we're getting to understanding that Linux is something that you want to run if you understand things more than Windows or what? Well, definitely from the user end side. If you just look at the interface right here, you click at the Linux start button, let's call it that, and you got access to different kind of things. Depending on which kind of Linux version you have, it can also be in the bottom here where the start button is on a Windows machine, but in this particular distribution, it's just up here. So definitely you can click on it and just access stuff, but what you really fast will find out is that most Linux distributions is probably made for some sort of purpose. Now, the one I'm running here is made for an ethical hacking purpose. We can also run other kind of distributions, which is more like made for everyday kind of work case, where any kind of use you do in a normal day. So let me talk about that. Okay, so you got stuff like Linux Ubuntu, and that is the most widespread operating system. Now, it kind of looks the same than this. It's a little different, but almost the same. You still face the same problems that how can I run Microsoft Word? Well, you can't, basically. Well, there are probably ways you can if you know how to emulate your software well enough, but that's going to be kind of difficult for you in the start. So before the video gets too long, I'm going to lay down some ground rules for you right now and say, if you want an operating system that is built for most things that run in the world, go with Windows, right? If you want an operating system that is built for ease of use and can run more or less the same as Windows, go for the Mac operating system. Now, if you want an operating system that is more customizable, and you can do stuff in your own way, and you can use it for other things than just, normal day-to-day work tasks, maybe Linux is for you. And this is what we're really going to get to in this video, because I can talk and talk and talk, and you can watch all the other videos on YouTube talking about the same topic that I'm talking about, but they're probably not going to touch upon the area that Linux is just not made for, maybe not you. I use Linux, I have a Mac computer, I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, I have a Windows computer running right now. This is an emulated software I'm running, so I can take the other screen on my end here, and that is actually running Windows. So let's get to the actual point, is what is Linux, right? So we already talked about that. It's an operating system that gives you a possibility to alter stuff as you would like it. It is not bound by any kind of rules. It is not in a prison of any kind. You know, you can do with it what you would like. There are many different kind of distributions of Linux you can use. Some are made for a purpose, others are not. Compared to Windows, which is just one thing in the box that can do whatever you like to do, but it's still contained in a prison. So if that's rock your world, we'll stick to Windows. I'm going to show you a few basic commands now, because it is time for us to really understand how can we then use Linux. Now, apart from using the UI and right-clicking and creating your folder, as you can see, stuff like that here, I'm not really going to focus on that too much, because that is easy stuff. You can just click. But when you open a terminal, something like this, you open a terminal, and this is maximized, but as you can see, you can just, you know, put it any way you would like. What you're gonna see here is the normal terminal, and when you have that in Windows, it is probably called the command prompt, right? And this is also Linux's version of a command prompt. It's just called the terminal. So apart from that, you probably is familiar with the all menus, and you can do different kind of things with it. Not really interested in all that, you know. What you're interested in that is that you logged into and opened up a terminal, and you see this weird, you know, it's a $sign and whatever. You will probably use this C:/ whatever thing, right? And I would like to say, yeah, but there's not a thing called C: on Linux. What you're going to find on Linux operating system is something different than that. What you're going to find is basically a drive, and the drive is what you're going to use. Now, if we just say, so can you write like dir and stuff like that? Well, yeah, you can write dir, and what you see is just a bunch of files. Now, I'd rather want to show you a bunch of files compared to a very naked place, because when you install Linux for the first time, you will not see any files. Most of the stuff we have here, and you probably look at the file called hot babe, it is not a picture of any kind. It is just a normal PNG with the woman in the picture. It's part of a challenge I did one time. So what you're gonna see here is just a lot of files basically, and these are the files that you're working with. This is your current working directory. And how do I know that? Well, you can write a command called pwd, right? And when you do that, you will get your current working directory, which is /home/Kali. And when you see the word Kali, you think, what is that? Well, that is the user that I'm logged in with. I'm logged in with the user Kali. Just as in Windows, you have like this C:/user/ whatever. You have something like that, right? And then you can access like Kali and desktop, stuff like that. Now this kind of also exists here. Let's go ahead and check out the behind of the home folder. So let's go one step back. So cd ... same as in Windows. There's a space between the dots which is needed. Without the dots, you know, it would not work. So if you wrote cd ... it's not gonna work, so I have to do cd and then space and ... When you go back to that folder, you see one folder more, which is the home folder of the user you're logged in with. Now, that is of course really nice. So if you wrote ls here, and that is lists, the command of list, that is the same as a dir command, which also exists on, well, some Linux distributions. At least this is also having the dir command. Then you can basically see that it kind of dirs out what's inside, but the ls is the Linux version of dir. You shouldn't be using dir. That really, it's not the best command in Linux, but just to show you that it does actually exist. Now, the ls command is gonna show us that this is a folder by giving it a blue kind of color. You can also go ahead and add on some arguments, which is ls tag, let's say al, and that's gonna enable us to see the folder content we're in, /home. As you can see, we're in /home here, and you can see that there is the file called dot, which is the current working directory. We have the file called dot, which is also a directory which is one back behind. So if we're accessing that directory called dot, well, basically we're going one back. Now, I call it a file, I call it a directory. You're just gonna focus on the fact that everything is a file. Even in Linux, everything is also file. So the file dot, if you're gonna access that by saying cd dot, basically that is change directory to one behind me. So that is the slash. And in Linux, the slash basically means the root of the drive. That would be in Windows // like that. In Linux, it is just slash. So it's the same kind of thing, right? We do see that there is a folder called Kali, and you can also see that by the color. Let's talk about the thing here that I marked in green for the folder Kali. Well, first of all, we can see that there is a timestamp, and there's a date for this. We can also see that there is a amount of space that is occupied in the disk, and you can see that the owner of well, the group, I guess, let me just explain that to you in a moment. The owner of the folder is Kali, so it's me, I created it. And the amount of stuff inside of it is 79 amount. And then you can see this, and that is probably what you're gonna get used to the most. The first three, as you can see, they're kind of like, they go in groups like that. 3, 3, and 3. The first three, and from the back, start depending on how you look at it, is gonna explain you how anyone that is not me, like Kali, or not in the group, it's a user group, and that is the second one here, permission type called Kali. So I am a group called Kali. I am also a user called Kali. I know that might be a bit like confusing in a way, but just think about it this way: that you're living in a building called your name. Let's just say, assume it's Daniel. So your name, your building is called Daniel, and there can be one Daniel inside of the building. But you can also put a Thomas inside the building, but that Thomas is still inside the building of Daniel. So if he is inside the building of Daniel, which is the same as a group, well then Thomas got the same access rights to that building's content, which is specified in the second next pair here. So that's read and execute for X. The one in the middle that is not filled out, you can probably guess it. It's a W, which is write. So in Linux systems, you got three different kind of access rights. You got read, you got write, and you got execute. Anyone can read and not write and execute stuff to this folder. Anyone in the group of Kali can read, not write, and execute stuff in the folder. And Kali and the last group of three, read, write, execute, can do read, write, execute, which is me. I'm the owner in the folder. The very first one specifies this is a default directory. Now, this was probably a bit more advanced than one of the other videos you looked at before on YouTube, telling about what is Linux and talking about how to use a command or something like that. But I really want to say this is probably more useful for you to know, because you're going to use all these kind of things. So let's go back into the Kali directory and do a ls. Now we know that command. And ls is just going to list all the content that is inside the folder. You can see some things are red and blue and green. The green stuff generally is a file that you can read, execute, something like that. There are different kind of versions of green. That is like the light version, which is also almost bold in a way, you could say. And then there is the less light version of green. Now, it is not too important right now what that means, so let me just skip that totally. You probably guessed that images are purple, at least the PNG formats, and the folders are blue. And do we see any more colors apart from that? Yes, you have some red ones. Red ones can mean different kind of things. Now this is a black background with red text. That's a zip file. In most occasions, that is the point of it. And I don't have anything else right here, would seem, that is of color. So you will meet other kind of colors. Let me see if I can find some later in the video, but don't pay too much attention to the colors of files for now, because it can easily become confusing. Now this is of course also the colors that are chosen for Linux Kali or Kali, the version that I'm in, the distribution, sorry, and probably not gonna be the same that you are in already now. But in most occasions it is not too far apart. When you look at folders and files, you probably wonder, well, what about hidden files? Alright, so let's do a ls, and you call this tag al, so you're gonna watch, list all the files, and you want all attributes and all listed. When I press enter now, it's gonna be one big list, and you will see like, oh, that's a lot of information. Well, yeah, when you look at it like that, if you scroll through all the different 79 different kind of files, but it's all the same one-line thing. As we already noticed, the D means directory because it's a blue, then D for directory, and the one with the dash, it's a file. There are other things. For example, this, it's a L, it's a link. As you can also see, it points towards, just kind of help you to understand that. There are different kind of types of files with different kind of purposes in Linux. Now, they all do exist in Windows as well, but you don't think about it in the same way. You probably say it's a shortcut. Yeah. And that is why Windows is really popular, because it's easy to use in terms of normal stuff. So let's go down here on the bottom and actually just focus on this file here below, and it doesn't really matter. Don't think too much about the name of it. Just focus on the fact that there is a dot in front of the file, and that means it's a hidden file. That is how Linux operates with hidden files. So when you type ls and press enter, you will not see the hidden files. You have to do a list all command like this one here. There are other ways, of course, but this is the most easy way. And then you see the hidden files, which is because some of these files are not really meant for your vision just by doing a normal list command. So if you want to see the hidden files, it is ls tag al. The exact order is not, it doesn't really matter. So you write ls tag al or la, doesn't really matter. You can also do l, which is listing everything as we talked about. But if you want the with only the a, well, then you're gonna see also the hidden files. So if you want the total list with all the system rights and descriptions and timestamps and groups and users and all the kind of things, you have to focus on, well, you have to write LA as a bare minimum. Now, we're beginning to understand that there are many different kind of things in Linux. Let me just clear the screen. That's another command. Clear, which is really nice. Now, many things in Linux is done through the terminal, so you had better get used to it. If you're thinking you can right-click in the UI here, set aside the terminal, and fix all your problems just like that, it doesn't work that way in Linux. So if you want to use something for a workstation for everyday kind of job, go with Windows. Always, I do that. You know, I'm just using Linux for specific purposes. So if you're watching this video, you probably think about a specific purpose, and that could be ethical hacking, like my channel is all about, or it could basically just be that I want to try to use Linux. Well, sure. All right. So Let's talk about another command. Let's go one step out now. Go back to the home folder and do a ls, and we can see that there is a folder called Kali. You could probably say, what if I write ls tag al? Will I see anything specific? We not. Can I create my own folder in this home folder? Can I do some things particular interesting? Well, we can. You can write mkdir, which is short for make directory, and you can type test, and you might see this. So you say, okay, you cannot create directory, test permission denied. Now, this is an error message. Basically, Linux operates from the fact, and in most occasions, that you can only access the different kind of folders which is accessible to you. Now, the home folder itself also got some system rights. Well, we could probably find out what that is. So we can say take al/home/ just like that, and you probably think that, oh, so I'm gonna see what's inside of the home folder now, and we just did that before by doing a tag ls tag al, and we did the same again, just with the folders. You can also direct towards your what you're gonna list towards a specific path. So the general thing is now we need to find out the home folder. What kind of permissions does that have? So in order to do that, I would suggest you go one back and do a ls/al, and you might say /home, for example, and you still see the content of that particular folder. So what you're gonna do now is just do a ls tag al, and you will see a lot of stuff now, just to bear in mind. So what you're gonna look for now, and don't think too much about this right now, look for the blue folders, one called home. So let's scroll. You have it right here. Let's focus on that folder alone. Now that folder alone tells me that home folder, which is the same as c:/users in Windows, is basically saying that this is a directory, and we can see that it's owned by a user called root, and it's also a part of the group called root. It's a house thing that I talked about before. The very first three here is saying that the user root can read, write, and execute. Right. Am I the user root? No, we are the user Kali. Next thing about home is that we can see that the next pair of permissions saying that the group of root can read, not write, and execute stuff on the folder home. Are we in the group called root? Well, we don't know. We can find out. So let me just go one back. Write groups, if I can spell. Oops, that's showing too much right now. Let me just go back. Clear screen, type groups. And oops, groups, sorry. No, not allowed. Okay, let me just write ID. ID is another way for you to focus on what kind of group you're in. So an ID is showing you, and this is probably a bit more advanced than what you're used to, but look at what inside the parentheses. Can you see the one called root somewhere? We cannot. We see stuff like I am the user ID of 1000, Kali, the group ID of Kali, and the groups Kali I'm in, and other kind of groups here, but none of these is called root. The number is a comma separated list, so that's a group ID. Don't pay too much attention to this right now. It is probably a bit more advanced than you would think it is, but it's not that difficult. Clearing the screen, going back to ls tag al, pressing enter, and looking back again, look in the home folder, we can see that we have a problem now, because everyone else at the last group of permissions can read and execute. We're missing the write, so I cannot write to the folder. So I was trying to create a a folder, and that is actually writing. So now we're learning about that. We're also going to talk about permissions. What is read, write, and execute? Well, let me go one back now, clear the screen, go into the home folder, and look at the content. Now we can do read and execute, and we can not write. So what I will do now is say, can I read that folder, ls Kaylee? And now we are getting the problem here is that it says, hey, what am I doing? What is this kind of error message? So I'm going to take you through an error message that is really common, because you're going to say, well, I'm in /home. Can I then say access /Kaylee? Well, you cannot, because / basically means from the root, so that's before home. Can I just write Kaylee? You can, and then it's going to show you all the content so we can read it. Can I execute it? Well, it's a folder, and folders are not executable, but if it were, we could. Can I write in it? Well, we could not. And we did an mk test, and we have a problem. We are back again to the same issue. We're gonna do pwd, which is showing our current working directory, which is /home. So what can we do in order to create our folder called test? Well, in Linux, you gotta do something called sudo, which is probably explained as superadmin do. You can probably say that. So if you write sudo, for example, you have to write it, and then you do something like mk test and press enter, you're gonna be presented with something different. Now let me just do that first of all. Now we're gonna be prompted for password. And the password we're going to be prompted for is the password for the user that you're using on the system right now. It also says the password for Kelly. It does say sudo first. So let me just stop now for a second and say, what is this kind of things? When you write sudo in front of a command, and the command is the mkdir command, and this is the argument for the command. So you're trying to say, the argument of test for mkdir, it's going to create a directory called test. But we need to do it with sudo privileges. And the privilege is basically because permission denied, cannot create directory test with the command mkdir. But if we do it with sudo rights or privileges, we are basically enabling our user Kali to create that folder, because superadmin do basically says we can access and write with every kind of system rights as the user we just looked at before, called root. The root user is the superadmin in Linux. Let me write my password for this user called Kali. It's a Linux trait that when you write a password, you cannot see it types anything. That is for security. I type my password, I press enter, and we get no error message. I can do ls now. And now we have the folder called test. And what we see here is something that we did not expect. The folder is owned by the user root, and it is a part of the group called root as well. We, as the user Kali, cannot, well, we can read it, because that is the last part of the permission set we are part of, because we are not the user root and we're not in the group called root. So what we can do is we can of course go inside of it, and can I create a file inside of this? Now the easy way in Linux to create a file is touch. Touching is like you take your finger and touch the sand. Let me just write something for now. Test.text. You got back to the same issue again. In order for you to create the file, you need to go back and do sudo in front of it. You probably know now. And do touch test.text. Let me do that. Sudo touch test.text. And now we're back. But hold on. Something were different. We didn't get the prompt to enter the password, and that is because it remembers you for a certain amount of time, that you just type the password, so you're still you, but at some point that remembering that you are you and you just type the password will run out of time. You have to retype it, and that's just the way it is. Now we can see that we have the file called test, and one more time, we're gonna list the directory content with all the different kind of informations. We can see that the file is owned by root. Now, in order for me to write stuff to it, I still, probably guessed it, still need to do something with sudo, and it's just like, yeah, but I want this file to be accessible by me, not just the user root. I don't want to use the sudo command every time. So what do I need to do? Well, basically, you basically need to change the permissions to the file. So you can change the permission of, well, first of all, you can change, you could say that you're the owner. You can also say that you are in the group of root and different kind of purposes here. Now, all these kind of things is a bit more advanced that, you know, so I'm gonna remove that from the video and say watch the next video I'm creating about Linux, because that's gonna talk about how to do permissions and all the kind of things. So we got into a part now where I kind of explained different kind of things about Linux, basic commands and stuff like that. And you are probably guessing that, so there are a lot of things you can do in this terminal, and it's all dependent on you have the correct access modifiers or the privileges, or are you the right user. Now, there are so many more commands you can do, and just to wrap it up, we did stuff like ls, list the content, we did clear, we did ls tag al for showing all informations in hidden files. We also did a mkdir to create a directory, and we created a file called test text with a command called touch. All the things about clicking files and opening them and putting stuff into them, and I'm going to do another video about that at some point. But for now, just focus on the fact that we're getting started with Linux, and this is how it works. I want to say that if this is for you, check out some of the other videos I'm gonna create about Linux, and let's talk about it, right? So for now, I'm gonna end the video and say hope you got somewhere with it and you learned something. Really hope you gonna watch my video again. Consider giving it a thumbs up, like, and gonna help me a lot. So see you again online and have real life Linux exploration phase.